Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's From Boxes to Butterflies. It's gonna be an interesting show to start off with because at the moment my guest hasn't quite made it, but I do have somebody else in the background until she's able to make it. However, as we get started, one of the first things I want to do is go through a few announcements. We have things going on. This has been a very busy and crazy time. Yeah. Hold on a minute as I make a quick note, but there we go. It's going to be a fun day. I know that. It's been a crazy week. And so what I have, I'm going to start off with some announcements of things that are going on. And yeah, have you ever noticed when things they kind of go all over the place and you have to punt and you just kind of go, oh, how is this going to happen? What's going to happen? Well, we get through it. And that's how it happens. One of the things I'm going to start off with is to talk about, I have some books out there. And I am a multi-time author that I'm now working on my 8th book, which the 8th one is actually my 5th for anthologies. And it's an amazing book. I'm enjoying writing. It's like I'm texting and there we go. These are 3 of my books that are self-published. Faith of the Butterfly is by Urano Publishing, and my Armor of God series, which I've been doing over the past couple of years. When it comes to writing, we have all kinds of different ways. We have the memoir, like I have up in the corner. We have the fantasy, which is what the others, and like I said, we've talked memoirs. And this memoir, or this anthology that's coming up, this is it. 27 authors. We have 27 unique stories that are going to be in this anthology. With 27 authors, it's going to turn into a roadmap of how each one of them has found themselves in the gray zone of life, what it was like, and how they thrived within that gray zone, how they were able to move about, get through life, and show the world that even when we feel stuck, we don't have to feel stuck. When it comes on the writing side as well, I actually had a course yesterday, a class through Level Up Academy. It was a free class on writing, storytelling for business. It was the first of 4 classes that Level Up is going to be having for free over the next month. And the second book is coming, or the second class is coming up next week. It is brand awareness through publicity, and it is being put on by our very own amazing Dr. Constance Leland. And CJ is going to have some things. I believe she's going to have a PDF with some her tips and tips and tricks. She's also going to have some of the things, platforms that she uses when it comes to publicity. Because the one thing we want to do is to make life easier. We don't want to have, if somebody's already reinvented the wheel, then why should you try to do it yourself? Instead, take the time, step back, join CJ's class, and get that head start of working on your brand awareness and putting it out there. I also want to bring up assist, because one of the things we're all about here is helping others. And there are times when something happens in our lives and we need help. We need our family. We need our friends to come in and be there for us. Oh, something happened in Danielle's family, something with her husband, and I'll leave the details for her. When it comes to what's going on, it's a financial impact. And so anything we can do to help, to be able to come in and provide that assistance. If there's something you can do, oftentimes even just saying, hey, how you doing? We're here for you. That makes a lot of difference. I know that very well from my sisters. For the others, it's sometimes we need a little bit of financial aid. So if there's anything you can do, this is a link to a site that is focused on meals to help people. If you can take it, you can share it. Otherwise, even just saying, hey, how's it going, is great. And I'm going to bring up a special guest that you all know and love. And I'm going to take care of a couple of other things in the background. Hey, sis. Are you there? No, you're on mute.
Of course I'm on mute.
Of course you're on mute.
How are we today, sister? How's everything? Is everyone doing good today? Today is a little bit an off day. This week's a little bit of an off week. We're quite busy. We are trying to get our book launched this weekend, really. It will be available next week, Thursday and Friday. So definitely inviting pretty much people and everyone. It's going to be available for 48 hours, probably like Thursday and Friday for free. And then um, any portions between the ebook and the, what do you call this? The ebook and the regular book, some of the proceeds will actually be going to planting trees. So you guys will be helping us help others provide jobs for farmers, but also really for the environment as well. So we're very proud of that. So what are we talking today? What's our topic today?
The topic today is actually, it was just having Jessica, and we were just going to go through her story. So really, it's stories.
Stories? What kind of stories? I've been in storytelling since yesterday. I'm in that storytelling mode,
I
right?
know.
That's so funny. But I think what I really love about storytelling is that we have so many stories in our lives, right? that we could share, that we could actually impact people. But sometimes we worry too much about, what if my story is not good enough? Or what if my story is not as good as other people's? Right?
Mm-hmm.
We always have that comparison issue, and then we minimize ourselves without even realizing that we are minimizing ourselves. So that's one thing. And a reflection of yesterday's class, you touched someone's heart, sister. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it was an amazing thing. I'm just sending a quick note here. Oh, I hear Cheerio.
I know, that's why I'm mute.
Why, sweetie? There she is. Okay, she's in the background, but yes, we'll do this real quick. The story in the class, somebody from, actually, she was in Egypt, and she asked a question about telling her story, because it's a question of, do I tell my story now and write it, or do I wait until I've had some schooling, I've had all this, I reach these milestones. And it's like, there's no reason to wait. The story isn't going to wait. And so we talked through that, and everybody was involved. You were involved, and suddenly, by the time she was done, she's ready to write. And it was really an amazing message from her when she came back and sent me a message today. It's like, this made my day. So yeah, it was a wonderful thing. But my
I think
guess
it's more than wonderful. If you really like, I get deep thoughts in my head, and like, it's not like, it's not like an EMT where you save someone's life because they're out of breath, but it's similar situation where you save someone's mind and doubts and put them at ease. It's like, that fire in your head, but they're all negative fires that's just coming in. She had all
Mhm.
those negative fires, and you were like the firefighter that put that calm and ease and said, it's okay. Now, let's put that fire down. Let's put the negativity Nelly on the side, put them on timeout for a bit because it's going to come out no matter what, and let's focus on the why, right? Why do
Right.
you want to share your story? Because a lot of people will say, oh, yeah, I'm going to tell my story, but there's no point of where you're going or where you're heading. And it's not a tactic, or it's not a business bridge, or it's not to sell anything. It's just like, why? If you ask yourself, why do you want to tell your story? And you don't have to answer that question to me, to answer it to yourself. Why are you telling your story? What is the point? Where are you going with it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And at the end of the day, if your answer is to inspire people, that if they are going through some things, there are ways you can be supported, and there is light after that dark tunnel, then you're in the right direction for sharing your story. I think everything is all about intentions, right? We don't
Right.
know what people's intentions are most of the time, but it becomes very visible the more they show up, the more they engage with us or not engage with us. And the more that they open up their mouth and thoughts and representation of themselves, right? Because I feel like you trust people more when they're consistent, um, and also making sure that when they show up, they say what they say and they do what they say, right? What are your thoughts? And I think it's amazing that someone really took their time to send you a note saying, thank you, Susanna. I'm very interested on writing now. And she didn't stop there. She said, I want to belong to your storytelling group. I want to belong. Think about that
Exactly.
word for a minute. That's belongingness, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really uplifting for me and everybody that was involved and knows about this story, is to see somebody who basically moved from a box of being stuck to beyond its boundaries, beyond its borders, and is now ready to take those first steps. It's like she was stuck, and the awareness got sparked during that conversation to where she can take over. And
Speaking of takeover, is Jessica
speaking
here?
of, she is here. So
Bring her up.
I'm gonna
Bye.
I'll put you down and I'll bring her up. Awesome.
Bye.
Love you, sis. And how's it going?
Hi, Susanna. I'm so sorry for it taking so long for
Don't
me to understand the link and
do not
everything.
worry about a thing, because it happens. It has been, let's just say it's been a very interesting couple of weeks. Because if you saw my show with Jackie, yeah, we had some things with that one too. Because so
Uh,
it's like, that one was definitely on my side, because with Jackie, it's like I put my computer on mute. It's like, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. My fault.
yeah, you'd think after a few years we'd be used to this, but more and more sites come up and
It's
anywho.
it's the way life is. And it's like I was talking with CJ, and as we and I've been talking with CJ and actually Danielle as well. It's all these different things that pop up, and all we can do is do our best to roll with whatever it is. And to be honest, I feel like all of this stuff is a perfect introduction in so many ways to you, because I got to read your story, and it's an amazing story, but just even the concept of rolling with the punches as we go, it just feels appropriate. I don't know. What do you think?
Life always gives us the challenges that I think we're ready for and we learn from, no matter how much time it takes us to get through them and persevere. And this being a very minute one in comparison, the
Well, yeah,
technical issues.
technical issues are always there. Um, I wish they weren't, but we make the best of it and move on. And it's kind of like with me, as I'm trying to do multiple things. It's like I'm trying to split my brain to focus on two or three things, and it's not always that easy.
Yeah. And I mean, I was in the generation of being taught, you need to multitask, get the most work done once you're in the workplace and everything. And then they've realized, oh, if you work on many things at once, then you're not really as focused on any of them as you could be if you just prioritize this first, work fully on that. So we're all learning. But,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And actually, speaking of technical difficulties, I'm wondering if you can maybe pull the mic just a little bit away from your mouth.
oh, sorry about
No,
that.
no, no, no. It's just you don't know until you start talking, and so
Is this
it's
a little bit better?
oh, much better, much better.
Oh,
It
perfect.
was the peas and that little puff of air thing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but otherwise, I mean, it's just so great having you and getting to finally talk with you.
No,
It's
it's great to be here. Thank you. And thank
reading
you for
this.
all your help with the anthology.
Oh, it's been a pleasure working with everybody and all these different stories, and just now now we're kind of looking at how we put them in the organization. What's the order going to be? Because
Sure.
a lot of anthologies, they just sit there and go, okay, we're going to do you alphabetically, or we're just going to put you in the order that you showed up. Or it's like, that doesn't work for us. When with CJ and I, that's another part of storytelling, is how do you create an order so that not only are you getting everybody's story, but you show how they fit the big story.
That makes a lot of sense. Going from one stage, perhaps, of where some people are in their chapters to, yeah, makes perfect sense, making a whole story in the proper order out of all of our own stories. And I'm very thankful again to be a part of this.
Well, and there she is. It's like the order is based on meaning, and that's what it is. But really now what I'd love to do is to have you kind of talk a little bit about yourself, whatever you want others to know about, because you have a story, you have what you're doing, you have some passions. And
Yeah,
this is
to
all,
go
it's
wild.
like wherever you want to go with it. That's what I love about this show. We
Sure.
go where
So
we go.
I guess originally, when thinking about what I wanted to write about, I did want to start with my uh, struggles following the brain surgery that I had at age 17, specifically left temporal lobectomy. Um, uh, and then I kind of wanted to go into the later years, but then I was like, oh, I've already gotten to my worth limit, but this is fine. It's a little preview, I suppose, of my life, mainly focused on how I was as a child before having the surgery at age 17, and then how I went through the resilience, really, of the impacts after that I wasn't expecting. So I realized at this point, I realized a couple years ago, once I finally was put on the antidepressants that I needed for a long time, but with my complex medical history, um, many psychiatrists were afraid to prescribe me, including my own. Oh, thank you for the glasses. um, comment. Um, and it really took my current um, my current psychiatrist to get COVID from patient zero. I actually was in the same room as him when he had it the next day. He was in the same hospital visiting somebody else. Well, our patient zero on the East Coast, anyway,
Right.
Westchester, New York. And so he was visiting somebody he knew, and our patient zero had happened to be at the same hospital the same night. He apologized during the session, saying he was tired and everything, but didn't have any of um, the impacts yet, which he then suffered the next couple weeks and ended up having long COVID. But I found it strange because this was February of 2020 and I went back to work. And even if I were to be one of the people who didn't get the impacts,
Right.
it didn't appear that I was passing it along to anybody. So I thought, oh, remember when everybody had the flu in December, but I didn't catch it from my family members. I'm starting to think that was COVID, and I already had the antibodies required. So that's my guess.
Yeah.
But because of his, I mean, it really lasted a long time, his brain fog. And which I think I can relate to because of my neuroinflammation that lasted about 9 months after having sepsis in 2022. Um, never got COVID to my, well, knowledge, but
Right.
then sepsis of all things. So I'm like, okay. Um, but he had the brain fog to talk about his out of body experience going into med school, which was a bit unusual for an appointment with my psychiatrist. Although he's a saint, he doesn't charge me, so it's all good to listen to what he has to say as well. And then he finally took the risk of prescribing me antidepressants, and after that, it was just so much easier to think. I didn't realize how depression was impacting my cognitive ability itself.
Right.
And it was then that I started realizing, putting together the pieces of my life's history up until then, and thinking back, okay, what were the aspects of myself that changed, that existed in childhood, that then pretty immediately changed with many people's notice. So it wasn't just something myself, but I came to realize that I think I was would be in this day considered on the autism spectrum, particularly as they have more research nowadays on female autism versus male autism, and the
Right.
differences in which it can show. I think camouflage was very easy for me as a child because I was high functioning, and I thought, okay, treat others as you would like to be treated. So I'm going to figure out how this group thinks and different things about them. And then perhaps the same will happen to me. But I really didn't understand numbers and how also I was hiding myself with
Right.
the camouflage that's common amongst women with and girls with autism, and just kind of was quiet, or earlier on found friends who I would laugh about what they told me would happen during my seizures, because uh, they weren't the most serious kind. They were complex partial, so I wouldn't be aware. But particularly in my younger years, they would just be really funny things that I had randomly said. Um, and I would get a kick out of them, honestly. And it was weird. I felt like I wasn't put into a box growing up, at school,
Right.
around family, friends, anybody, um, because for some reason my seizures didn't seem to define me. Um, I, as I mentioned in my chapter, I was in a K through 8 Catholic school, so knew a lot of the people pretty well. Um, and in the 8th grade yearbook was voted both best voice and most likely to be a rocket scientist. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like, a school where I'm missing anybody making fun of me
Right.
or anything. I just can be me, and that's great. We all kind of split up for high school because there was no parochial Catholic school that was in the area. And I didn't want to go to this all girls school where basically a lot of the girls from my grade school were going. And my mom said at this night where all of the high schools were representing each other, she said, "This one's focused on music," which was something that she had gotten me into as a child, not wanting to leave medicine as a last resort
Right.
um, for my seizures, and instead focusing on music, which I love writing songs to this day.
Wow.
Just a hobby for me, but maybe should turn into something else. I don't know. I think you need connections or something, but um, but I um, I feel like it was kind of a blessing to be different in the ways that I was, because I never felt bored being alone. A lot of people needed other people's company, or chatting small talk to feel included. But I just felt included in this world at large and loved going around. I'm from the suburbs, although I went to high school in Northeast Philly, and enjoyed walking in the creek and just collecting my thoughts and just thinking about the kind of things that children my age wouldn't be talking about, and drawing complex mazes in my spare time, which uh, I've entered an art show for Neurodivergence Week coming up, including mazes that have a few important words as part of them. I know I'm going kind of all over the place on this.
It's totally fine. I mean, it's you, and there's just telling our story. Oftentimes, telling our story, it can be so hard to figure out how to streamline it, as it were. I mean, you've got it for the book, but this is the place where you don't have to focus on what you wrote in the book. It's whatever you want to add, because our story is so much more than whatever it is we're used to telling people. It's always interesting to see when something new pops up, like when you talk music. So writing music, that's something totally new because you never talked about it in your chapter.
Yeah, I think I just kind of mentioned that as a child, I enjoyed my time writing some songs. I remember writing one with my second cousins when I was visiting them in Ohio, focused on, um, they were rather religious, but I added in like the importance of helping the more vulnerable people, as that was something, as Catholics that we had focused a lot on. I don't know, leading up to our confirmation in sixth grade, and I loved it. Um, I guess I guess I've grown up with empathy, but it's only grown in time. And whether I've experienced what they do or not, it doesn't really matter because I know that I've never met anybody who's been through my experience either. And we just share stories with one another. And I try to help them. It's funny, actually, at a climate related event last night, I ran into somebody who I was on the associate board of for a nonprofit in New York City that fights homelessness. Unfortunately, the associate board, they really weren't. Um, they just kind of stopped supporting, and I had questions before getting myself out there as co-chair because I felt like we weren't given a lot of opportunities on what we wanted to actually do.
Right.
And it just kind of fell apart, unfortunately, because that was at least some place I could refer the homeless people who I talked to on the street to call this number. At least they have one place for you to stay overnight before then talking about, they first focus on mental health, which I think is very important. Our laws
It
here
is.
are unreasonable expectations that they have the same kind of mental health, or we've just been ignoring mental health for so long until COVID. And
I
uh,
think that's really what it is. That
yeah,
ignoring it, or we're a lot of us grew up, and it's just you don't talk about emotions, you don't talk about feelings, you don't talk
right.
about, and if you think it's like, oh, maybe I need to see a counselor, but oh, they'll think I'm crazy. It's like not the counselor, the everybody else. Like, oh, you're seeing a counselor? What's wrong with you? It's like
Yeah, I
it
mean,
took a long time.
I know that, I mean, looking back, there's a lot more information nowadays, in terms of, uh, the the surgery that I had and they didn't even know that I had a brain tumor until they found it actually
Right.
during the surgery. So I take MRIs and everything with a grain of salt to this day, because all that's happened is that there's more scarred tissue than there was before the brain surgery. And if that was what they were focused on, then why isn't it considered an issue now? But also the fact that there are details in the report about my amygdala being moved, something that they didn't focus on. They seem to focus on all other parts of the temporal lobe except the amygdala, which controls emotion, because neurology just thought that psychology was a pseudoscience at the time.
Right.
And when they had me go to before and after a psychologist for these all-day tests on all sorts of memory and thinking and everything, it had absolutely nothing to do with emotion, nothing at all. And when they warned me of side effects, they did not warn me about personality change, which I really loved myself before. So it took a very long time um, to get used to my new self, but particularly with the depression, it was really bad, and something that wasn't accepted by the field itself that had operated on me. My mom certainly, I knew, didn't believe in depression based on what she would comment on my cousin's case. So I really felt like there was nobody to be telling this to, plus everybody was so happy for me. I didn't want to say, hey, things actually suddenly seem to be worse. um, and also, I hid it
Yeah.
from you, but I honestly was independent when I had seizures, but secretly because I knew you wouldn't let me if I said, but I would sometimes go from work where public transportation was available and go someplace else to see a movie by myself. And in one case, I actually had a seizure in the movies. And I was like, oh crap, this is going to be so embarrassing because of the stories before in which I've done crazy stuff. But this time I came out of it and it seemed nobody had noticed. I hadn't done anything. And I wondered if the stress during my seizures was due to what I knew I was going to face from the people around me following it. Because it took a while for me to get back to translating my thoughts into words
Right.
based on what I know as aphasia, which I still kind of face. I took Latin to help me with my English um, because verbal has never been my strong suit. Numbers, completely understand, figured out by myself, things that I wouldn't learn for a number of years. Um, but uh, yeah, I knew that I already could be independent, but I was afraid of sharing that, which maybe in retrospect I should have, since the purpose of the surgery before college was so that I could have my independence. So in college, I started seeing a counselor on campus, and or I guess a couple of them, and they just blamed my depression on my weekend drinking instead of how it was the other way around. I had been depressed for over a year before I started drinking in college and just kind of felt like it was a way to numb my depression in the moment rather than it being the actual cause, although I mean, it's a depressant and it long term doesn't actually help. But when there was nothing I knew of that could help, including psychiatrists who were afraid of prescribing me anything because of my complicated medical history, and I can understand that. I
Right.
completely think it's their right to not have to take on a patient who they may think may have reason to sue them down the line, which is especially common in America, unfortunately.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, the fact that it took COVID to finally get what I needed for half of my life was funny. And then just thinking about, yeah, the certain things about my childhood, and then reading certain stories about other people who had realized at a late age, particularly women, about their stories. I was like, oh, I can relate to this, I can relate to that. And of course, in a way, that's putting myself in a box. But
Not
I think,
really. Not when you can have that relation, and because oftentimes that could be what helps you ignite your own awareness to something.
right.
And to
Yeah,
me, when you ignite the awareness, that's where you start being able to take back control and being able to step beyond the box that you're stuck in.
exactly. Yeah. I think that finding the box itself that perhaps I was stuck in uh,
Exactly. Because
is, yeah. And some people say, not to look back at the past, that, just going forward is, and that works for some people. But I think partially you have to figure out what got you to where you were, to where you are currently, in order to know how to then, in your own unique way, move forward
right,
with the gifts that you're given. And uh, yeah, really just finally focusing after many years of working on really what it is that perhaps I want to transition into. Um, a box I would say I really was put into was based on family, actually.
mhm,
And uh, perhaps my mom was autistic to some degree without knowing, who knows? Because she can be very literal about things, sometimes. Like, one funny story was, when she asked, Jessica, would you like to take out the trash? And I said, would I? And then she responded, yes, would you? And my siblings and I just cracked up because she didn't realize it was a joke.
right.
um, and I know there are some of those where I missed things being a joke, but I also have used sarcasm where people have missed it. So I don't know if, but reading stories about other people, and how, like in the 90s, leggings were pretty uncool. But I wore them because they were comfortable, and I really didn't like the feel of denim, even though, it, yeah, that was all the thing.
Yeah,
And I just decided I didn't care what people thought of what I wore. I was just going to be comfortable in that. And some woman from Canada who wrote a story mentioned that. And I mean, I didn't have to face public school where you're judged for what you wear, I guess, since given we had a uniform. But still, outside of that, could have been made fun of. I didn't face exactly what she did, but I recalled, I'm like, oh, that's something I forgot about. I remember sometimes, my friends, and when I would get at lunch really worried about my upcoming Latin test and remembering the words. I would be so focused on my note cards and going like this, which I guess is stimming. And my friends at the lunch table would be like, Jess, put the claws away. And I'm like, but I didn't know a lot of these things at the time, as, my generation, if you could um, get by, then it was, you weren't considered anything. Um, and I kind of found it funny that later on, when my cousins on both sides of the family, both boys, were known to have autism, I just, when they explained what it was due to, I was like, that doesn't sound like anything that I did that growing up. Like, what's the big deal? Um, and my mom thought the same thing. Yeah, like you were doing that stuff. But my mom was very also focused on, when I was a child, on not putting me into these kind of boxes. And we would just do normal things. Though I think in one stance she went a little bit too far when I had a 72-hour EEG. So um, the wires on your head
Right.
to measure. And when you have it for that long, you can go home. You don't have to be in the hospital, and you basically have it wrapped in the wires wrapped in bandages, which at that point I felt like the only thing they kind of looked like were turbans or something, and I just wore like a hat on top. But even then she was like, it's important that we do something for some reason. I'm like, this can be a stay-at-home weekend, but she had us go to the circus, so to totally normalize everything. And I wore a hat on top, and then my younger sister, less than 2 years younger than me, but rather quite a bit younger, at least at the time, in maturity. And she just ran off with my hat, and I thought to myself, oh, kids will be kids, and just was indifferent about it. um, but I don't know. I mean, I laughed a lot about uh, what I went through in childhood, and then felt like I actually started having a disability after the surgery, and especially not knowing what to do, because I had gone from something that people had considered a disability, although I really hadn't realized it, to something that a lot of people were like, oh, depression is something you can get over. But
Yeah.
given the stance of this, like it was, I guess literal head trauma, through what they weren't aware they were doing, especially since their plan was just to remove some scar tissue that they saw, without realizing underneath the tumor and what parts of the brain could be impacted by that. And of course, yeah, how they were not aligned to, and still kind of aren't. When I've most recently seen a neurologist, they all kind of know one another in the field, and are overprotective of themselves. And growing up, it was always like they knew everything, but then things would change, and they never said that they were wrong before.
No,
Like after the 72-hour EEG, I just didn't have any seizures during that period, and they said I don't have seizures. Well, many people are aware that I do. So that, definitely wrong.
oh yeah, definitely.
And plenty of things. And luckily, I was a bit prepared for COVID, because in the New York area, in 2019, we had a measles outbreak. And my mom told me for the first time that I never had the second measles vaccine as part of the MMR, because that had led to my febrile seizure, which I was aware of. And uh, I, my after surgery, my neurologist said perhaps it was the febrile seizure you had as a child that caused this tumor. So then I was thinking, wait, the measles vaccine could have caused this tumor? And I looked into the CDC's website on febrile seizures um, following the measles vaccine, because it turns out it's not that uncommon, but mine was complex, so I had to be hospitalized, whereas most children's are simple, and they go away after like less than a minute, and they say everything's fine, you can keep the child at home. But mine kind of kept going. So I just kind of looked at the CDC's website and realized a year ahead of the pandemic how political rather than scientific they were, because they were so defensive of the vaccine itself that they said the vaccine can lead to a fever. That's the only thing that's at the vaccine's fault. Then the
Right.
fever can lead to a febrile seizure. I'm like, isn't that just using the principle of like, if that fever only happened because of the vaccination, and then
Exactly.
that, I'm like, this is so politically written rather than scientifically written that in a way I
Right.
was ready for all of the political science that came out starting in 2020. And of course, at the beginning, knowing that we were low in supplies and everything, I knew that they would have to use game theory and say some things that weren't true in order to get to the optimal outcome for the population. Um, Game theory was one of my favorite classes in college, including all of the calculus and everything, and mix that with psychology. So I was like understanding that, but then with the vaccinations and how much later they uh, said about the side effects and everything. I mean, there's something that really has to be changed, I think, in that regard. And the fact that my body, my choice is like everybody agrees and disagrees in different regards with, or at least people on, religious to one side of the aisle. It's like nobody's consistent on things. But
There's not. I've seen some things where um, somebody would somebody would talk with people and they're like, when what do you think about this person saying this? And they're like, oh, it's bad, 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 bad. It's like, oh, wait a minute, this person said that. Oh, well, we know it's they're like supporting. It's like, how is it that we can say you can say it and you're bad, you can say it and I'll like give you an excuse. So your
yeah,
politics are right there, and it's just I think a lot of that is when they write these things that way, it's it's kind of a lot of people may not see the vaccine to flu or headache or which or fever to whatever comes next.
right.
They're willing to stop at the one thing. They're willing to not see the connection and see them as two totally different things. Whereas so many others of us is like, if you go from here to here, this wouldn't have happened. Just like you said, B wouldn't have happened without A. So if C is caused by B, then A
Yeah.
has to have been the cause.
It was just crazy, and I just realized how political the CDC was. So I'm like, I'll take what they say with a grain of salt. And then the next year, well, we were listening to them a lot, but I'm like, well, based on what they've said before. Um,
Yeah.
and then also it was a very fast process to get the vaccines going. Actually, I even volunteered to uh, do vaccine testing, but I guess was a bit above the age they were looking for. Um, and I was quick to get on to getting the vaccines because I was throughout COVID volunteering outside to get people in poverty the food they needed for the next couple weeks.
Right.
Um, so even though outdoors, I still was rather close with in distance with these people. So felt the need to get that. But then we found out later it doesn't actually impact other people. You still can get COVID and pass it to others. So once it became that, then I think it's my body, my choice. As long as it's not, uh,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's a lot that they didn't know, and the testing period was, not for the number of years that now we're realizing down the line there are certain side effects for. But the fact that there was so much pressure on people to not think for themselves and go with this narrative, go with this that you need to do, otherwise you're anti-vax. And I hate that nowadays we're putting people into this box or this box. There's no spectrum. There's no way you could think for yourself and be in between. You have to go either with tribe A or tribe B and
Or,
agree with everything they say. And I'm like,
well,
I see
it
what
goes even farther, because when you get put in these boxes, whether and it's whether we choose it or whether somebody else is like, oh, you have this, you're neurodiverse, so you go in the neurodiverse box, and everybody that's in that box is like whatever subset of a subset they choose to fit their narrative. Like, you're all the same. And the reality is, you just take that box, like LGBT, like race, like pick a
right,
box.
right,
It's as diverse in that box as it is across the country. And you can't say that everyone who's in that box is the same, because there's going to be a lot of them who they don't belong in that box. The only reason you're stuck there, I mean, I've got my own boxes, is somebody finds out this sliver about me, I know how they're going to paint me. And yet, if I've never associated with these boxes that people would stick me in, because it's like, that's not my box. That's not what I am. That's don't talk technical stuff. Talk who the person is. What's your soul? Who are you? Not what are you? And maybe that's what it really comes down to, is who we are versus what we are.
yeah. And I wouldn't you can keep continuously breaking down the boxes into smaller boxes infinitely, like you can infinitely break down time. So until you get to each individual person. But there are things that I enjoyed about learning about the fact that I'm neurodivergent, which, I only found out the word a few years ago. Um,
Right.
so that I can help other people. But in order to do so, you have to also understand their very different points of view. It is funny to me that a lot of people who are autistic have ADHD, which at least in Britain, ADHD has caught on. And I'm like, I thought of them as being so different. But it's interesting because I've made friends with somebody who has both, and now you can break down autism itself into so many different things that for some reason they decided to clump all together into autism, and I can't even define it anymore.
Right.
Um, so I'd like to know that, and it literally means selfism, which I felt I fit that because I was fine doing things by myself and was comfortable with that and have continued to be. But that's not how it works for everybody, especially as the genes mutate. And I hear stories about my colleagues' friends, children, sorry, who have autism and are trying to be very social but repetitive or something. And I mean, it's just all over the place. Some people are nonverbal. You can break down all of these different boxes into continuous boxes until we're,
Yeah.
but just understanding and being empathetic to anybody's story and realizing what help they require to reach the equity level of the average person around them. Here's actually one of my mazes on equity. um, and yeah, I just think it's just really important that we all become more empathetic to everybody's situation, particularly if you haven't had a very severe experience in your life yet. anybody can become disabled. So that's kind of, you know, group that helps anybody to at least increase their understanding of, in my opinion. I know we're going a little bit over because I was late.
It's fine. It's just like, yeah, we're up at the top of the hour, so it is kind of the end, but it's also been just a blast talking, and sometimes the best conversations begin with that first one, and the fact that I've had a lot of first conversations with people that this is where it was. It's more of a public conversation versus the private, but it's all good on that. And at this point, I'd kind of ask, do you have any, as we kind of get ready to wrap it up, do you have any golden nuggets or any kind of final words that you want to drop, and also just how people can reach you?
Sure. I think the best way to reach me is through my LinkedIn. So it's linkedin.com/in/Jessica-Lee, Lee -Harvey. And I work for Barclays, so if there are multiple, like I'm that one, if you just look up my name. And I'm happy to chat with anybody about anything. Definitely have significantly grown my my network over the last couple months, and I've been loving these audio groups that I've participated in, where everybody's free to say whatever they want to, and you can learn about a lot of different people's experiences, but that like relate to maybe something you're going through. And but yeah, if anybody wants to reach out, I would say that in the years in which I was really struggling through depression, what helped me was helping other people. Just something that I grew up with, and then just to see like the impact that I could make on other people was a warmth to my heart, regardless of the need of medication in response to the brain trauma. But it's always something that's near and dear to my heart to help those who are more
Right.
vulnerable. And then I feel like what goes around comes around in unexpected ways. And but yeah, always happy to be part of this sustainable world in whatever way possible. So
Exactly. No, it's been great having you on, and I don't even worry about the beginning. It's like it actually. See, the thing is, I'm very much of the butterfly effect, and to me, it's the butterfly effect as written by Ray Bradbury in A Sound of Thunder. It's not that butterfly in Thailand flaps its wings and gives you a hurricane in some other part of the world. This is a time travel story. So to do anything, to change anything from the past, no matter what it was, no matter how minute, like stepping on a butterfly,
right,
it changes the present.
yeah,
And especially when during the past, it's like I did not like the person in the mirror, but I reached a point where I look in the mirror and now it's like I like who I see in the mirror. Why would I want to jeopardize that? And just taking that even to as small as the past hour, um, there's a lot into it, and we don't know what the conversation would have been any other way. I don't
true.
want a conversation. I like how it went. I think it went great, and so
I
there's
know,
no
I don't know what I was nervous about.
exactly. So it was great, and for everybody that's joined us, it was great having you here, and I want to thank everybody for coming. My next show is actually Friday, and Kinga's going to be on. And other than that, and it's great that I'm able to have you and Kinga and so many other authors that I never met before 2 months ago.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be connected to all of these great people, and look forward to the book published being
It's
published
a
later this month.
yeah, it's just over a week away. So awesome. And thank you everybody for coming, and goodbye.
Bye, Susanna. Bye, everyone.